pupil, student expulsion. Does the board have any questions? Okay. Dr. Wagner, I had a few questions on this particular case. I don't think this is something that the board ever takes lightly, and I was just, I guess, I don't like it when I'm sure that we make the efforts to bring people to the hearings and to be a part of the whole procedures. So would you please walk the board through what efforts were made that the parents and child in reference were notified?
Absolutely. Initially, they're notified directly by the assistant principal of the school, and they're given the information from them. Oh, my notes. And then we hand deliver a letter notifying them of the meeting date. If we are unable to hand deliver it, we deliver it by certified mail. And often, I can't say for sure in this case, we will attempt to deliver it. Again, this was delivered by certified mail on February 15th, 2012, and received by the parent.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a question of Hilda. Hilda, in the meeting notes we have, the background public content, the reference students is recommended for expulsion, but the recommended action is suspension. Okay, that's the question I had. Thank you very much.
Do I have a motion?
Move the governing board approve to expel the reference students. One or, okay, it's plural in here, that's why I said it. To expel the referenced student.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes 3-1. Next item is under general discussion and approval of guidelines for the human growth and development curriculum. Dr. Boyle?
At a past study session of the governing board, there was a conversation that the board would come back to have a conversation and some recommendations and further action for the human growth and development curriculum. So at this time, the governing board has had an opportunity, each member, to provide information to Hilda on some concepts regarding human growth and development. So at this point, Hilda has compiled that information, and we are now at a point where the governing board is going to have this conversation. I will say that at the study session, the governing board did have an opportunity to receive some information on the different types of human growth and development curriculums, from abstinence only to abstinence plus, and so there are some decisions that have to be made as to what is the most appropriate curriculum for the students in Creighton School District. So at this point, I'll turn it back. Did you have something else to say, Dr. Wagner? Okay.
So I just want to point everyone's attention on the board to the document under important documents with the information that we all provided and Hilda compiled for us. And just glancing through this, I don't really see anything that's in conflict with any of our particular thoughts or ideas. So at this point, it would just be a matter of, if there's something on here that we'd like to strike, I say we talk about that now. But otherwise, okay, it's under
Library?
Under welcome.
go to welcome.
Okay.
What I think would be the most appropriate move from here would be to commission an advisory committee to develop this curriculum based on these recommendations, so that we have a program.
I would just say that for the curriculum department, the biggest piece of information that they need to know from the board is the choice between the three types of programs, from abstinence, abstinence only,
There's abstinence, abstinence plus, and
Plus
then
and
comprehensive.
and it's the comprehensive, that's what the board needs,
Yeah.
the group needs to know in terms of your choice.
Don't we also need to, because bottom line, we don't have money to develop our own curriculum, correct?
Right. Well, I think they have provided some good places to start
Right.
where we can do this for little to nothing.
Right.
If we went in, one path or another. I do see, there's a couple nods here for comprehensive and one for abstinence plus.
Those are actually the same thing.
Right, and I was gonna
Yeah.
mention, they couldn't really distinguish those with much clarity for us when we had the special study session. So, I guess we're at a point where we need to make a decision as a board. Is this what we want to push? And I know that this has been a passionate issue for some people on the board, so this is, I guess, the best time to kind of say this is what we stand for.
I have a question. In the past, has this curriculum been treated differently than other types of curriculum in terms of how the district decides the curriculum and how it's
Honestly,
implemented?
when Arizona law first came out, it was abstinence.
Correct.
The curriculum was developed years ago, even before my time, and it just continued along those lines, even after the law changed and gave options for the type of program. The program was updated once, maybe twice, with a group of teachers and nurses. But that's about all that's happened to it.
Okay.
And so it is, the current program is out of step. I can tell you just whether, I'm not trying to influence you, the nurses have chimed in to say abstinence plus comprehensive program is where they believe it needs to go.
Yeah, well, I think that, do you have another question? I'm just gonna say, I think we should, I'm recommending we give the green light to develop a comprehensive curriculum. I like the components and the recommendations that our collective input have put together, a parent component, load, cost, parent involvement, stranger danger. Let's talk about, need to talk about other STDs, not just AIDS and HIV, which I think is important to really emphasize that we all have different beliefs and values, but that we're not taking a side, but kind of giving the big picture. Of course, looking at before 7th and 8th grade so that students can identify and understand the location and function of reproductive organs. Of course, building in no shame about bodies and curiosity, respecting bodies, etc. I think this is a really
I would like to
good starting point.
direct a committee, an advisory committee to find a already set up program that incorporate most, if not all, of our points. We might not get all 15 or 20 points, but we might get 18 or 19 of them. And one that's already established and low cost, rather than developing a new curriculum.
Excellent.
Does the policy state who will be on the advisory committee?
Well, we have the policy in that same folder.
I see it for some reason.
I thought.
No,
We
that's
don't.
strictly the name.
Oh,
Okay.
that was-
I've seen it before. We did look at policy on how that was, but the way that I see the advisory committees working is we as a board say, this is the information we want. We assign the kind of the big picture and a leader, and then they come back and say, this is what we can do for you, and this is our timeline, and then make the recommendations, and the committee then is the fund. So that's how we can proceed.
I'd like to see us making a recommendation and have a timeline so that this can be implemented by the next school year.
Dr. Wagner, is that going to be a problem?
I'm speaking with Michelle Berg, that in fact was our timeline.
Okay, great.
Okay, so in that case, I think we have a plan. We'd like to commission an advisory committee to use these recommendations, find something that is in existence that meets most of our requirements, and then we will make our decision.
Do we have to make a motion?
Just have to recommend it.
Well, the recommended action here is move the governing board provide direction on the parameters for the development or identification of human growth and development curriculum for Creighton School District students, which I think we just did.
Okay.
And it's on the tape,
Yes.
and there's a form. Do I have a second?
Second.
Not a motion.
Okay, well.
Carl made the motion, he can make a motion.
Okay.
So I make the motion. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Our next policy item is on naming policy, facilities naming. Also about a month ago, we had a similar conversation, and we were instructed to provide some parameters or thoughts to Hilda to put together for us. There wasn't as much input on that as there was the previous item. There was a request, of course, from me that we change it from an ad hoc committee to an advisory committee so that the board maintains the ultimate control from start to finish with the timelines, the deadlines, that it's open. From that position, we could specify we want X amount of people that represent different communities. It would still be the board's decision, but I think it honors the fact that there are people who feel very strongly about having an input on this from the community. So my only suggestion was, I guess, to start with what we had, rather than blowing it up and striking out the pieces that said ad hoc and the details, and just leaving it more for the board.
I'm quite comfortable with that.
I mean, we would still have, like recommendations on the rationale, like, we actually don't have to put any of that in there. We just, this is what the governing board has the authority. This is kind of what we're looking for. We'd love to do this through an advisory committee.
Are you talking about FF?
FF, yes. And then in terms of, because this is where we had the trouble before, is how do we document the 75%? What does that all look like? I would suggest that we leave that out, and that we would just discuss that at the appropriate time when we form the advisory committee with our parameters.
So you just make the policy broader and more general?
Yeah, but I also change it from ad hoc to advisory.
Oh,
I'm not, second,
Excuse me,
this
do you want me to go, because I have it loaded onto that, and I can start striking out if you want?
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
okay. You have the ad hoc in like the fourth paragraph. On the second paragraph, the naming and renaming of district schools buildings. The last sentence, if there is a death of a staff member or community member, naming recommendations may be made following the 1-year anniversary of death. I don't think we should put any time frames on that.
I agree.
If you have a community, you have all these people involved, why have a time frame putting it there? I'd rather just have that struck out totally and not even mention it.
that's fine with me.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, I'm like a total math person and I have no idea what I'm seeing. So I don't even know where to strike out.
Okay, it's the second paragraph, the last sentence.
No, but how do
Oh,
we strike?
at the bottom left, there's something that says closed. There was an earlier version of this document that was open.
Okay, but this is like the actual Word document?
Yes, but
And
that
I
panel on the
don't
left,
see
if you
where
go to
I
the bottom,
format.
if you go to the bottom,
Okay,
right there,
close.
close. Oh,
And then go to review at the top,
Uh-huh.
great.
and then track your changes. Let me see here, changes.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
track changes, okay.
Yeah.
And then if you want to make it fit at the bottom right, you can make it instead of 150%, you
Okay.
can make it 100 or
Okay,
81.
so then how do I strike out?
So,
Just highlight it
and then hit delete, and it should make a line.
or just hit.
It
Just the
should,
delete
if I
button.
hit delete?
No, not on ad hoc.
Well, we're gonna, that was the first thing we talked about, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
advisory committee, or advisory committee.
That's fair.
I guess I should have taken name off too. And I can fix this once I get it to my desk.
Okay,
Okay, so,
so let's just start from the top and move down, Hilda.
mhm.
The first area we'd like to make a change is at the last sentence of the second paragraph. If
Okay.
there is a death, we're gonna
Mhm.
strike that sentence.
That whole thing?
Yeah.
I think one of the questions that came up a while ago by Nat, the 75% documented level of school and community support, how does the committee is it 75% of the community, or is it 75% of the respondents?
Well, I would suggest that we,
Change that, or even the 75% is kind of
Yeah.
a high mountain to climb.
yeah, so how about we just, let's get to there. But like, let's start here at the third paragraph, because right
Okay.
here it suggests, if someone's interested, they go see like a principal, and then the principal forms a committee. And we're changing that because we want this to come to the board, and the board assigns a committee. And then in my head, the way it would work is the committee, or that we assign, when we assign it, we'd assign those parameters. What does the 75% look, or what is the threshold we're looking for? If maybe we're not even looking for a threshold, maybe we just want some other types of input. So let's just change that third paragraph first and work our way to that.
Do we want to, okay, so the third paragraph is the part that says principal unit administrator.
Yeah.
And that's what we're gonna change that.
So what is that being changed? Anything else?
Governing board or the.
But the governing,
Hilda?
yeah, the governing board,
To the governing
now,
board.
if I'm a community member and I
To
want
the
to
office of
change
the governing board?
something to something,
Yeah.
as of now, policy, I would go to the principal, and the principal would then form the committee. Now you're saying they have to come in front of the board and put it on the agenda to even form the committee. What if, it seems like you're cutting people's, it seems like an arbitrary way to stifle things if the board is not happy with it, where the principal is responsible at this point to doing it. If a community member comes to a principal, the principal has to ensure committees formed, whether it goes or not. Now you're saying they come to and have to get it on the agenda, because if they mention it in public comments, we can't do diddly squat. And what if we don't like it, or the board of the future?
Mhm.
Then there's no committee formed, we don't tell anyone to do. It doesn't make us form a committee. And it kind of
Mhm.
stifles community input, where now it has to be done, in the future, it would not have to be done. Go for it, Jim.
This is just from an operational perspective, in terms of that statement.
Mhm.
The principal unit administrator, this has nothing to do with who has the authority to put together the committee. But it often, and we learned in the last round, the principal gets put into a very difficult situation if they're the person that's in charge of that. So
Yeah.
not just giving you that information to say that needs to be considered.
I see your point.
Right. It's not, I'm
It
not
puts
taking,
them between a rock and a hard place. Would it put any other administrator between a rock and a hard place, politically, where the board is supposedly apolitical?
I mean, that's why I like it just coming to the board. It doesn't mean that they have to present this idea at public comments. It could be they present it to Hilda, it comes to the board in one way or another. I guess I'm less concerned, I mean, we're the political people that are the ones that are gonna make people, some happy and some mad, obviously.
I guess the thing is, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Smith is president of the board 1 year. The president of the board decides with the superintendent the agenda. If Mr. or Mrs. Smith, president of the board, decides they didn't like, say they liked LCK, the name it is,
Mhm.
they could forestall that being done by just agenda items.
Mhm.
It's not, I understand where you're coming from, but it could be, it's putting too much power in one person's hands, where the whole community might want to change the name of the school for one reason or another, and one person could stop it if they wish to.
And they could vote that one person out. I mean, that's also kind of the way that the,
But they could
That
stop
works.
it for one whole year, or two.
or a form a recall and push
Oh,
that up
that's
quicker.
Let's not even go there, okay? What
Yeah.
I'm saying is it's putting too much power in one person's hand if you want to do that way. Unless an agenda item can be put on the, an item can be put on an agenda. You can put something in the policy that says if a community member wishes to suggest or name the school, it shall be put on the agenda. That way, it's a definite and one person cannot block it.
If I may, I don't have a problem with it being forced to be brought to an agenda. I don't think that a community member, simply because they suggest the name of change of a name to a school, that automatically we should have to appoint a committee.
Okay.
Because if I
Kind of agree with you. on
one
that.
day retire from this board, which I hope to do on Monday, and I should come here and say, hey, I was a great board member, I think that you should name one of the schools after me. I think the board should have the ability to say, that's nuts, go away.
I'll tell you.
Thanks. You'll still be here.
I'll still be here. No.
And maybe maybe it's something that, maybe we should be forced to take some sort of, or a board should be forced to take some sort of action, but I don't think that the action necessarily needs to be the appointing of a committee.
How about if it shall be put on the agenda, the board can, at that point, for
For
consideration, and the board can decide whether to have a committee or ground
kill
it.
it.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
how's that? But I just don't want one person to have power.
I mean, I think that we've, in practice, for almost most of the things we've heard through open comments, we've somehow come up with putting that on the agenda soon thereafter, I think we've done a pretty good job at that. But if you want to put that in writing, I don't have a problem with that at all.
I don't agree because we have a broad power as the governing board member to, or as governing board members to make this change if we want to. And I think we're putting extra restrictions, and again, we're gonna build a policy that puts restrictions on ourselves. And you guys know I hate talking about this policy because I feel like there's more important issues to talk about. So
Yeah, but the problem is, and I don't see the problem as the problem with this board. The thing about policy is we could suspend rules for anything. To me, policy is a reflection of our values. It's a signal, a symbol of our commitment to our constituency and our community. And when this came up in the first place, it was, why didn't you ever look at this? This is what it tells us, the community. And you know, if the next board that's here wants to suspend policy and do what they want to do, that's going to be on them. But I think that while we're on this board, we have an opportunity to address what we've all decided is a flawed policy. And I don't want it to just be like, yes, like we already know we have the authority, but like I want there to be some sort of commitment to our community, that we will hear them in one way or another. And I think that what Donna mentions, if someone wants it on the agenda to be considered, we'll consider it. If we want to move forward with it, then we have that authority to form an advisory committee. I just don't want to put our principals in those positions when they have other important responsibilities. If it's going to be political and it's going to be divisive, because that's how these things are, then that can be us. That's fine. I think that tells the community something about us as a board today, as we're composed today. That's why I want to put those items in there.
They shall request, submit, I'm reading what you have, a request in writing to the
Do you want me to put
board secretary,
the office of the governing board?
Yeah.
office of the governing board, something like, office of the governing board, for placement on the agenda?
A future agenda,
Is
Uh,
on a future agenda?
board agenda,
yeah,
meeting.
future,
For consideration.
okay, if we have Mr. or Mrs. Smith deciding not, should we put a time limit within 2 months, 3 months, quarter, what? I mean, they could, you know, somebody could still forestall it if they wished.
Yeah.
Within,
I think the time constraints were more something you were interested in, so
I'd say within 3 months, you know, if the board is really busy with other matters, you know, sometimes our boards are packed and sometimes they're lean, but within 3 months, they should be able to do it.
Within 3 months?
Mhm.
Yeah. For consideration, yeah, that's good.
And then after that sentence, it might say,
Uh,
if the governing board decides.
And should I cross off this next
right, yes,
sentence because it says
Yeah.
the principal unit administrator,
right.
Should we just change that to the governing?
the governing board?
No, well, maybe
No,
not, because I think we want to write something in between.
Something about the governing board.
If the governing board at that meeting, or at that meeting
Well,
decides.
the governing board will consider, yeah, if supported by the governing board, it's great, yeah.
Okay, so what am I gonna say at this?
If supported, if supported by the governing board,
An
advisory
board.
committee
Yeah, an
to
advisory.
include, you know, the rest of the people.
It's just just deleted my whole sentence.
Edit.
Edit it. There's no
Wait, where
edit.
is
There's no
Okay,
edit.
next to the save button at the top left. There's an arrow.
Okay, I see it.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, an advisory committee Okay,
Shall include,
that
An advisory committee.
will be,
Oh, an advisory.
yeah,
I'm like scared to delete because.
I understand.
advisory committee
Shall.
shall be formed to include the bottom.
And then the
Yeah,
bottom.
members.
And so I'm just gonna, for right now, I'm just gonna cross up all of this and then I'll fix it.
Yeah, we probably don't need to define more about the advisory committee because we already have another policy on advisory committees that I know Suzanne brought to our attention about a year and a half ago. The advisory committee.
Advertise and solicit for I guess the chair shall bring the recommendation to the superintendent.
Okay, we're going to
Second, the advisory committee must publish the request of soliciting input from the school and community.
Okay.
Take out principal unit administrator.
Yeah. The advisory
Committee shall.
committee chairman,
Chair.
Chair.
chair, leader.
Gender neutral.
Chair.
Uh-oh.
Advisory committee. Chair.
Yes.
Chair.
Shall bring the recommendations to advisory committee, superintendent, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Rationale. That's the 75%.
Oh, and then the recommendations, yeah, we just can delete that because we would just set those parameters when we commission.
Right.
I agree.
I agree.
I do not want a 75%.
So do we take out this whole thing too? Is it
Uh,
district-wide support?
District-wide support.
Yeah, delete those two sentences because the advisory committee would be instructed by the governing board for what kind of input and what threshold they would be looking for.
Okay. So I like
Criteria,
geographic. How do you judge exemplary moral character?
so what about instead of shall, maybe?
Yeah. Maybe.
The criteria for selecting the name of the school facility,
We
maybe.
should name
Should I take out shall?
Yeah,
What should it say? This one.
all right. Does that look good?
Where are we at? Go down.
Okay, go down.
Chosen.
I think it's a big improvement.
Yeah, it's big improvement.
Not really. It says go to the meeting twice. It's presented twice in public at the meeting, at a governing board meeting.
I'm in historic, can you put it like historical / local significance?
Person of historical / local, yeah.
It's doing-
Not local.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes, that's,
yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
and it's all May from there on, so
It's May.
suggestions.
These are,
Yeah.
yeah. But the advisory committee would be given parameters by the governing board, like, hey, like, this is what it says here, this is really what we're looking for, narrow it down. This way we're not wasting anyone's time, it's a lot more focused, with more clear criteria. A more streamlined process.
It's still,
And this will still be brought back for first reading, so you guys can
It's-
review it at home once,
yeah,
you know,
is
if
the
there's any
last,
changes and
is the
things.
last bullet point the last thing there?
After
Yes,
Okay, it says,
and the only thing on the second page is the adopted.
shall be chosen. Can we? I know that the governing board at that time, or whenever, would put parameters on and various other things. So can we put anything in there that, says, a lot of what I heard in the past about the change in name school, where they really wanted the name changed, but they weren't in support, I'm talking about community members talking, was that they were only given one option. Can we put in anywhere in there that it is requested that the committee come up with at least two, or something like
No.
that if possible?
We could, or we could leave it to the governing board to assign that when they form the advisory committee. But if you want to
I mean,
protect that, we
yeah.
could write
I
that
mean-
in there.
Prior to the latest name change, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah,
You know, and I had been on the governing board for a period of time, but we hadn't had a name change in any of the schools. And that's a lot of what I heard from the community. They wanted to change the name of the school. They didn't like the name of the school, but they were not given an option.
yeah. So if we look at the paragraph underneath the membership composition,
Yeah,
we could say the advisory committee must publicize the request and solicit input from the school and community. The advisory committee chair shall bring the recommendation of the advisory committee to the superintendent. We can put it in there. Shall bring the recommendation of at least two names.
good.
Okay,
Okay.
hold on.
Could-
At the meeting.
Could one of the names be keeping the current name?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I guess last time we got into this situation, it had to do with the desire to change an existing name. I think a lot of it was to change an existing name that people found offensive versus in the future it may be that we have a name that people don't have a problem with, they just want to name a school after a certain person, let's say.
Yeah.
yeah,
And in that case, the committee may want to say it's either, that's the purpose is to,
Right.
we have
or keep it the
we don't want to
same.
study this, we want to, yeah.
This or the same. That's fine, any two names,
So there's at least two.
but at least two.
Well, but
Current
if-
name or name change, that's the only options you have.
But if that's the case, you could just make it one option and the board could always just shoot that down and keep it the same, so you wouldn't really need two options, I guess.
Mhm.
I mean, I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I would see a need for it to be in policy.
I don't know. See, I wouldn't have thought of that, but then the community came back and said a lot of the community said that. And I wouldn't have thought of that before.
So the two thing, I don't think would resolve that problem then. It would have to be three.
Could we say something about opening it up for discussion of what various options may be? I'm just thinking generally here, without mandating that they come back with a certain number, saying
That's
that,
an idea.
should consider what various naming options might be. I don't know how you word that.
I like,
After
Yeah.
consideration of various name proposals.
yeah, how about, the chairman, the chair of the, shall come back with a recommendation of,
The options. And
the
we just-
committee's options of names.
The committee's options, and then it's
Yeah.
just,
Committee
yeah, apostrophe.
Yes.
options
And then strike the,
of names, is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, that way, you know,
Going across this, I just feel like. I'll fix that T then.
okay.
yeah, the advisory
To
committee,
the,
superintendent, And see-
Other recommendations. Yeah. Yeah,
I have no further input on this.
I'm fine.
Tiffany's fine.
Wait, I think the sentence doesn't really
It
make sense.
doesn't read well.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, but
The-
I thought you were gonna clean that up.
The advisory committee chair shall bring, okay, the recommendation of the committee's options of names
So maybe
to the committee. I think that's
To
supposed to be
the
to the governing board.
superintendent.
To the
To
superintendent.
the, okay,
Okay,
Is
so,
there a
so
recommendation?
Okay, so-
I'm gonna take this off
take out the advisory committee.
and just to the superintendent.
Yeah.
Okay. For her recommendations and to the governing board possible approval. Yeah.
I think it's ready for first read at a future board meeting.
Or at least a look over.
No,
Okay.
thank you. All right, this is Matt's favorite time of the evening, legislative and political report.